All right, so let's get started. So understanding the DASH diets. My name is Allison Knights, and I am your on-site health coach. Today, we are going to take a look at what the DASH diet is and how it can help not only lower your blood pressure, but also improve your cardiovascular health and your overall well-being. So what exactly is it? The DASH diet stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, and it's really focusing on increasing whole foods, so fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean dairy and meat products. And by doing this, we're increasing our potassium intake, which the daily recommendation for is 4,700 milligrams, and the average American does not get close to that. And then on the flip side, it's looking at decreasing that sodium intake. The average American consumes more than 3,400 milligrams a day, and the daily recommendation from the American Heart Association is 2,500 milligrams, and that's if you don't have any current risk factors. If you already have high blood pressure or high cholesterol or low HDL, they typically want you to stay closer to 1,500 milligrams a day. It is extremely easy to hit that number if we're not paying attention. So combining the DASH diet along with physical activity, stress management, other lifestyle changes can potentially reduce your blood pressure and other cardiovascular risk factors. So to get started, we have to look at reading a food label. This is extremely important. Some of you may already look at food labels. Some of you might not really know what to look for in a food label, so I wanted to go through that first. So the first thing you want to do is you want to check the serving size. The serving size listed on the package is 1 serving for that package. Many times people are surprised at, if we're looking at crackers, maybe a serving size of 5. Like Triscuit crackers, a serving size is 5. But how many people actually eat 5 crackers and call that a serving? So looking at that first. The second thing is to look at the total calories. Now the calories listed are going to be the calories that are found in 1 serving. So anytime we're eating more than that serving size, we need to make sure that we're taking into account that that's now however many additional calories if we're eating a double portion or a triple portion or whatever. The next category listed in green, these are all nutrients that we want to pay attention to and limit. The first being total fat. We want to limit this to 3 grams per 100 calories, or less than 1/3 of our calories coming from fat. If we break that down further, saturated fat, which is the fat that's found in mostly animal products, we don't want any more than 6% of our total calories from this. So in order to calculate out your saturated fat needs for the day, you would take your calories, so let's say 2,000 calories, and multiply that by 0.06 to get that percentage. And I think it comes out to 120 calories. And then you're going to take 120 and divide that by 9, because there's 9 calories for every 1 gram of fat. And so I think that number is 12 grams or 13 grams of saturated fat. So no more than that daily. And that's based off of a 2,000 calorie diet. So you might need a little bit more or a little bit less than that. But limiting that can really improve your heart health. The next thing listed is trans fat. And this is the man-made fat that's caused when we take a unsaturated fat, which is typically liquid at room temperature. So think plant-based oils. And we hydrogenate it. We throw hydrogen at it to make it more stable and more solid at room temperature. By doing this, we increase shelf stability and increase its shelf life, but we cause this trans fat, which is not heart healthy, and there's really no recommendation. We're just told to avoid it as much as we can. It is interesting to note, too, that the FDA does not require companies or manufacturers to report if there is less than 0.5 grams in 1 serving of some food item. So if you're eating more than 1 serving, however, that 0.5 grams can add up, and that can become an issue. The next thing is cholesterol, so a max of 300 milligrams per day for that. And then again, that sodium max, which we briefly talked about previously, 2,300 milligrams per day if you already have high blood pressure high cholesterol, or other concerns, they typically want you to limit that to 1,500 milligrams or less. So these are the nutrients that we want to limit. If we look at the red section, these are generally nutrients that we want to get enough of. So fiber, we want to look for foods that have at least 5 grams or more. A good rule of thumb, or one of the main things I ask people to look at, is, bread. For a bread, you want at least 3 grams of fiber in one serving size. There are many options that have 2. If you can get 4 grams, that's even better. And obviously 5 grams is the best. You also want to take a look at any of the vitamins and minerals that are listed there, and you want ones that have high amounts of these micronutrients. So if we look at that purple section, that is the percent daily value. So this is what percentage of those calories or those grams are attributing to your personal numbers. It's a good rule of thumb to know the 5-20 rule. So 5% or less is low in that nutrient. So when we were talking about fat, cholesterol, sodium, we really want to be closer to that 5% or less of our daily value, because we want to limit those nutrients. Whereas when we're looking at vitamin D, when we're looking at fiber, protein, potassium, those types of nutrients, 20% or more is high in that nutrient. So it's a very good source. So we want nutrients, or we want foods choices that have that 20% or more. So whatever nutrition label this is for is 20% of the calcium needs for the day and 45% of iron. So great sources. That 10 to 19% range is kind of the good, okay source. As far as carbohydrates go, carbohydrates are broken down into 3 different categories. You have your sugars, you have your starches, and you have your fibers. Now, we could break those down even further. We have our soluble fiber, which is the fiber that we actually digest, and we have insoluble fiber, which we do not, and it basically keeps our GI tract healthy. We have our basic starches, and then we also have our sugars. So sugars are key because sometimes they occur naturally in the foods that we eat, such as fruit, and the naturally occurring sugar would be fructose, or it can come from refined sources such as table sugar, which would be sucrose. The daily recommendation from the American Heart Association is to limit those added sugars to less than 25 grams a day. Typically, for fiber too, it's a good thing to remember that fiber, women need about 25 grams of fiber a day, and we want less than 25 grams of added sugar, whereas men get a little bit more. They need about 27.5 grams of fiber, and they can limit their sugar to 28 grams or less per day. They get a little bit more. And then lastly, we take a look at protein. Protein accounts for 10 to 35% of our daily caloric intake. And so that's a pretty big range. And each person is going to find that their values are a little bit different. But you probably don't need quite as much protein as you think you need. You only need about 0.0 grams per 1 kilogram of body weight. And so take your weight in pounds and divide that by 2.2 to get your weight in kilograms. Multiply that by 0.8 to get how many grams of protein you need in a day. Generally speaking, even bodybuilders only need about 1 gram per 1 kilogram of body weight. Typically, anyone who needs higher than that are going to be people who are recovering from surgery, people who are recovering from 3rd degree or worse burns, or are very ill, because protein is what repairs our organs and our tissues and our muscles. The next thing you want to look at is that ingredients list. This is a good ingredients list to look at because there's a lot. So foods with more than 1 ingredient must have an ingredient list on the label. Ingredients are listed in descending order by weight, so from the most prevalent to the least. And you personally want to try to choose labels that have fewer ingredients and ingredients that you either recognize or that you can pronounce. So I briefly want to go through this. Looking at the first ingredient listed, it's enriched flour. And so when we talk about refined versus whole grains, enriched is kind of its own category. So a whole grain it's the entire grain. It contains the bran, the endosperm, and the germ. It contains all the normal nutrients that it should. A refined grain has been stripped of all of those things, and it doesn't really contain much nutrition. An enriched grain means that it's been refined, it's had everything removed, and now they are putting back some nutrients, but not necessarily in the ratio that they were originally present in the whole grain, and not necessarily even the same nutrients. So there are pros and cons to an enriched flour. I'm not going to say whether it's healthy or unhealthy. Going with the whole grain is obviously better just because it's less refined to begin with. Now, that's the first ingredient listed. The second is riboflavin, which is B2. But now the next two ingredients listed are corn syrup and sugar, both types of sugars, and they're very highly prevalent in this food item, followed by soybean and palm oil. So when I talked about saturated fat, looking at that food label, we talked about how saturated fat is mostly found in animal products, but the plant-based products that it is found in is coconut oil, surprisingly, because that's kind of a buzzword, palm oil, and palm kernel oil. So this is another thing you want to pay attention to, is that palm oil or palm kernel oil found on your label. A common place to find this is shelf-stable peanut butter. So shelf-stable peanut butter has either been hydrogenated, or if you go with a natural peanut butter that you do not need to stir, so think Skippy natural peanut butter, it's going to contain palm oil or palm kernel oil to give it that shelf-stable look. The best option is to go with the one that you have to stir every time, or the one that you stir and refrigerate to prevent that separation, because that's what plant-based oils, unsaturated fats normally do, is they separate. If we look a little bit further, not only do we have corn syrup, but we have corn syrup solids, dextrose, high fructose corn syrup, and fructose. So that was another 4 sugars right there. And anything that ends in that OSE is going to be a sugar. And if we continue down, we have a bunch of stuff that I don't know what they are. I don't know how to process them or how to pronounce them, and a ton of coloring as well. So just being aware and being more mindful, even looking at the ingredients. If you choose to eat that food, great, but just being more educated and aware of what you're consuming. If you want more information on nutrition labels in particular, www.eatright.org is a great resource. It is the National Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics website. All right, now that we know how to read a food label and to look at that ingredients list, let's talk a little bit more about the actual DASH diet. So eating fruits and vegetables, a good way to get this in is to start your day with either an omelet or scrambled eggs or little egg cups filled with a variety of vegetables. You can switch it up so you don't get bored, or a fruit smoothie. Again, add variety by using different types of fruits, and you can throw in some vegetables if you want. Lots of people like to add kale or spinach or carrots or something to get that in. I used to work with a client who hated vegetables, and she would have a fruit and veggie smoothie every morning just to make sure she was getting in her servings of vegetables for the day. Another great thing is to make a salad for lunch with a variety of different veggie toppings, whether it's your main entree or it's a side. Try stir fry for dinner, switching up those veggies to keep things fresh too. Try packing fruits and vegetables as snacks. Generally trying to pair them with some type of protein. So here I have listed, an apple and peanut butter, or celery sticks with peanut butter, but it could also be, a banana and a handful of almonds, or a peach and a string cheese. If cost is a concern, you can choose canned fruit and vegetables. But generally you want to choose canned fruit that's packed in either 100% juice or water, not corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, or light syrup. And then as far as vegetables go, trying to choose the no salt added canned veggies or the low sodium. But in a pinch, or if it's cheaper to buy the regular options, just draining them and rinsing them can reduce the sugar and sodium content. Same thing with frozen fruits and vegetables. Generally speaking, these are both picked at peak freshness and either canned or flash frozen right away. So very often they actually contain more nutrients than fruits and vegetables that either had to travel a long distance to get to us, or have been sitting on our counter or our fruit basket or in our drawer, our crisper drawer in our fridge for a while. Obviously, getting from the farmer's market is probably your best bet, but sometimes it's not. All right, specifically looking at reducing sodium intake. So 1 teaspoon of salt contains about 2,300 milligrams of sodium. So remember, that's the max daily recommendation from the American Heart Association. Most of our sodium intake does not come from the salt shaker. It's coming from processed foods, frozen meals, and restaurant entrees. So a lot of times, I'll have people talk to me about, well, I don't really use salt in my cooking. But if we're eating a lot of prepackaged meals, that's where that salt is coming from. If you look at that food label and you look at your daily value percentage, a lot of times those lean cuisines, banquet meals, they're going to have anywhere from a third to half of your daily percentage for the day, just in that one meal. Now, if that's the only meal that you're eating that day that's prepackaged or from a restaurant, it's really not that big of a deal. But if you're eating every meal like that, that's when it starts to add up. Again, choosing that lower sodium or no salt added options. And some people will tell me for sugar or salt that, their threshold is high, and when they try something that's not as sweet or not as salty, they don't like it. And I understand that, but your threshold can change. Your salt threshold can change in between 4 to 6 weeks. And then if you're to have something at the same level, same saltiness or same sweetness that you would have had 4 to 6 weeks ago, it's going to be too sweet or too salty. Our body will adjust. Again, rinsing canned vegetables and beans to reduce some of the sodium. And instead, try seasoning your foods with your own marinades or dressings, typically using some type of citrus juice, fresh herbs and spices, and some type of oil. So cooking with herbs and spices, because I'm saying let's cook with herbs and spices instead of using strictly the salt shaker. Well, how do you do that? You can make your own marinades by combining those citrus juices, oils, fresh herbs, and spices. You can create rubs for different types of meat using dried herbs and spice to add flavor without adding that sodium. For leftover fresh herbs, you can finely chop them and freeze them in an ice cube tray with oil. You can finely chop them, lay them flat in a freezer bag, and freeze them, because usually if you buy a big bunch of cilantro, you're not going to use it all and it goes to waste. So this is a great option to be budget friendly and to add that flavor without adding extra salt. So dried herbs are about 3 times more potent than fresh, so you can use less. So if the recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of freshly chopped, let's say, parsley, you can use 1 teaspoon of dried parsley. Generally speaking, you want to use fresh herbs for fresh dishes like salsas, homemade dressings, marinades, or as finishing touches, cilantro for tacos, fresh basil on pasta. But you can use dried herbs for hot sauces like spaghetti sauce, different types of stews, different types of soup. And if you would like a little bit better idea on, okay, what herb or what spice should I use to season chicken or season beef? If you go to this link at the bottom, which should be in the PDF files, they give you some better idea specifically what to use for what type of meat. Increasing your whole grains and fiber. So again, checking that label. The first ingredient that is listed on a whole grain item, whether it's whole wheat or oats or rye or whatever, should be some type of whole grain. Otherwise, it is not a whole grain. Start your day off with a piece of whole grain toast or a bowl of oatmeal. Oatmeal is great at reducing cholesterol and helping improve blood pressure as well. Swirl in a tablespoon of peanut butter, add a little bit of milk, add fresh fruits, berries in particular, or bananas to sweeten it. Check the fiber content of any of your whole grains, and remember that 20% of the daily value is a good source or great source, and less than 5% is a poor source. Try swapping in whole wheat pasta or brown rice into your white rice or your white pasta. Try starting with 1/3 or a half, mix it together. Sometimes people say that it's either bland or too dry. So start making that transition with baby steps, and then eventually you might be able to just eat the whole wheat or not. Try to make at least half of your daily grains whole, and try making a large batch of brown rice, whole wheat pasta, quinoa, farro, or other whole grains to use ahead for the week, to just be a side, to pack for lunch easily. Typically, they last about 5 days in the refrigerator from a safety standpoint. Limiting saturated fat. So saturated fat, again, is mostly found in those animal products like meat and dairy, but as far as plant sources, it's also found in palm kernel, and coconut oil. You want to limit your intake to no more than 6% of the daily calories. So I was correct with my math earlier. So for a 2,000 calorie diet, it's about 13 grams total. Remembering you're taking your personal calorie needs, multiplying it by 6% to get the total calories that should be coming from fat, saturated fat, and then dividing that by 9, because there are 9 calories and 1 gram of fat. For protein and carbohydrates, it's 4 calories per gram. Avoid trans fat as much as possible. This is generally found in baked goods, snack foods like crackers, cookies, and then fried foods as much as you can. And then choosing lower fat dairy options, leaner meat sources like chicken and fish, trimming the fat when you can. When you're picking red meats, trimming off that extra layer of fat, choosing an option that has less marbling in it. More marbling means more fat. Removing the skin. If you find that it gets dried out if there's no skin on it, I personally like to cook with like chicken thighs with the skin on and then remove the skin when I'm actually eating it. If you do have high cholesterol, they even recommend draining and rinsing the extra fat that comes out, not just using a turkey baster to suck it out, but actually rinsing it. But that's your personal preference. Next, we want to increase our healthy fats because healthy fats are heart healthy. They improve our heart health. They suggest eating fatty fish like tuna or salmon 1 to 2 times a week. If you're not a fish person, you can always use a fish oil supplement or a krill oil supplement. Cooking with oils such as olive, avocado, canola, these all have heart healthy fats in them. Still watching the portion sizes though, they're still fats. Same thing with nuts. Try walnuts, almonds, and pistachios for a snack. Other nuts are also good options, but these are the most heart healthy choices. But again, watching the portion size, there's still fat, and if we eat too many, they can affect us in a different way than we want them to. And a portion size for nuts and seeds is generally about 1/4 of a cup. So it's not huge, but if you are eating them and one by one or small little handfuls instead of shoving the whole thing in your mouth, it will be filling. Try using mashed avocado, potentially seasoned with lemon juice and ground pepper, as an alternative to mayonnaise or other dressings. It still gives you that creaminess, but instead of that saturated fat that's found in mayonnaise, you're getting a healthy dose of fat. Baking substitutions. So when we're baking, there are actually a lot of things that we can use in substitution of butter or oil. So for baking, substitute 1 cup of oil with either 1 cup of applesauce, a cup of mashed banana, or a cup of pumpkin puree. You can also substitute 1 cup of butter with a cup of applesauce, coconut oil, mashed banana, or prune puree, which generally you would find in the baby food aisle. Try 3/4 cup mashed avocado, a cup of pureed black beans, or 1 cup chickpeas in place of 1 cup of butter for chocolatey goods. So more like brownies, blondies, fudge, chocolate cake. These are going to go better in those types of foods because the cocoa powder can hide some of that taste. I've actually made a chocolate mousse before, which was really low carb if you're looking for a low carb option or you have diabetes, with avocado. I think it had a little bit of honey or agave nectar to sweeten it, but not much, and cocoa powder. And I mean, I told people because they knew that I make stuff like that, but they could hardly tell the difference between that and a regular chocolate mousse. And then try 1 cup Greek yogurt or 1/2 cup of coconut milk in place of 1 cup butter for breads, muffins, cookies, other types of baked goods. You can also use beets, 1 cup of beets in place, but that would be mainly for red velvet cake or other chocolatey goods. And pumpkin is a good option to replace things for fall when we're making a bunch of spiced goods. Next is limiting alcohol. So 1 alcoholic beverage equals 12 ounces of beer, a 5-ounce glass of wine, or 1.5 ounces of 80 proof liquor, or a shot. Men should limit their consumption to 2 drinks or less a day, whereas women, we need less of things, so women should limit consumption to 1 drink or less a day. There is proof that excess alcohol consumption is linked to an increase in blood pressure, so keeping that in mind. Now, aside from all of the nutrition tips, in order to live a heart-healthy lifestyle, it's also suggested that if you are a tobacco user or smoker, that you quit smoking. You do have a tobacco cessation program here at ThermTech. You can also schedule a one-on-one appointment with me for help with that if you are interested. Get enough good quality sleep. So it's not just getting enough sleep, but making sure that you're feeling rested when you wake up in the morning. Again, if you need help with improving sleep hygiene, available for one-on-one coaching. Managing stress in a healthy manner. So remembering not excess alcohol consumption, not using fast food as the cure-all, but finding healthy ways to manage stress, maintaining a healthy body weight in ways that work for you. And of course, being physically active, that exercise component is extremely important. The recommendation continues to be at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise a week or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise weekly. So moderate intensity is considered to be you're able to have a conversation but feel a little bit winded. If you're vigorously working out, you are not able to hold a conversation whatsoever because you're breathing heavily. And you want to make sure that you're incorporating different types of exercise. So cardio exercise is important for cardio health, but you also want to incorporate strength training or resistance training using bands, weights, just your body weight to make sure that you're increasing your muscle mass or your lean mass, which also then in turn helps decrease fat mass. Also balance exercises, especially as we get older. Adding instability and increasing our core strength can prevent falls later on in life. It also helps improve our bone density. And then, of course, stretching, which you actually want to be doing dynamic stretching. So arm circles, leg kicks, things where you're moving and warming your muscles up before you work out. And then stretch as a cool down after. And this is when you can do more of that stationary stretching, like your quad stretch or reaching for your toes, because now your muscles are warmed up and you're less likely to pull something because you're warmed up. And that is everything that I have on the DASH diets. If you're interested in making a behavior change, if you have more questions on the DASH diets, if you're looking for help with diabetes prevention or management, stress management, especially right now, or trying to fit in exercise into your life with the gym still closed, meal planning, or you're just looking for some extra support, education, accountability, please contact me. My information is listed below. You can either give me a call, shoot me an email, or you can follow the link and schedule with me below. And here is the source of resources, great resources for not only the DASH diet, but also healthy eating, nutrition, cholesterol, blood pressure, and many other options. So if you're looking for a good resource for any type of disease or health and wellness question, I would highly recommend any of these below. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you next month for healthy snacking and lunches. Hopefully that'll be in person, but if not, we'll be back on the Zoom meeting and I will send out the link for this after. Thanks so much.